welcome back to Miss Willow's Book Club. Today, I'm going to be doing one of my favorite episodes of the entire year, my 2025 reading recap. I'm going to be walking through my favorites and my least favorite reads from each month, the books that completely surprised me in both the best and maybe the not so best ways, and all of the reading stats that honestly tell a bigger story about what this year was actually all about for me. Some of these books became my all-time favorites, and some of them missed the mark entirely, but a few of them still live in my head rent-free. If you love reflecting on your reading year, hearing honest book opinions, or just want some recommendations and validation, grab your coffee, or in my case, we are drinking wine tonight. Get cozy. Let's turn the page on 2025 all together. So I talked in the previous episode that I wanted to start doing a drink of the episode, and I felt, what better way to do that than with a nice big glass of wine? I have already had a little bit. What is better than sitting and having a glass of wine and feeling like you're chatting with your besties and recapping your 2025 of your books? Does anybody else feel like their books tell on them a little bit? Because I felt like this year they kind of did. I feel like looking back at this year, my books kind of showed the story of what I was going through, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So what's to come in this episode? We're going to go over the stats. We're going to go over the favorites and the least favorites. We're going to go over why. And we're going to go over, you need to read this book or please take this book off of your TBR. So without further ado, let's get into it. First up, let's go through some big picture stats. So my reading goal this year, you guys, was 75 books. And in the past, I've either hit it or exceeded that. This year, not so much. I read 54 books. So I was way below my reading goal. And I was not expecting to be that off the mark. And so I had to reflect and be like, what the heck? What's going on? Why was I so far behind on that reading goal? And you guys, I talked about this a little bit on the podcast this year, but I went through a really big breakup at the end of 2024. I moved into my starting over apartment, and I'm sure that you guys have now seen this over the last year. And honestly, my life completely flipped upside down, which is a great thing now that I'm on the other side of it, but it was really difficult when it first happened. I could barely get out of bed, let alone pick up a book and have it captivate me enough to where I wanted to just sit and read it and do nothing else. For probably the first couple of months of 2025, I was in a really dark place. And you can kind of see through my journey of how many books that I read throughout the year, what that kind of looked like. So as we go through the favorites and the least favorites, how many read for each month, it kind of shows a bigger picture. So that's that. I was way down on my reading goal. Let's see here. My most read genre was obviously fantasy romance. You guys know me. You know that I can't get enough. I love the character development. I love the growth. I love the journey. I love all of it. But the biggest thing is Shelby loves characters. I love to feel. I love to cry. I love where I'm just like kicking my feet and giggling and laughing along with the characters. And there's just something about that I just absolutely love. Now, I know that a lot of people are super plot driven. I love the plot. If it can't keep my interest, then I'm like, I don't know about it. But there is just something where it has to be like a good character development in order for me to give it like a good 5 stars. All right, looking at my best month and my worst month. So my best month of reading in 2025 was April, and I read 8 books in April. So about 2 a week. And for me, that's crazy because I had a few audiobooks in there. I love to mix in a good audiobook with a physical book. And honestly, you guys, April was also my best month for ratings. I had 7 out of 8 of these books were 5-star reads, which is absolutely insane. Like that, how can I have so many 5-star reads? But we'll get into it. My worst month of the year was August. And in August, I only read I only finished one book in August. One. That is absolutely insane to me. And so having my best month in April, my worst month in August, I had to kind of think back on like what was I doing in those months where I was doing such good reading in April and such bad reading in August. Or I guess I shouldn't say bad. I guess I should probably say I just wasn't doing it. So in April, that is really when I started kind of coming out of my shell again. That is when I was like, okay, life is worth living again. Like, I had met so many new people. I had been getting myself out there. I had been hanging out with a bunch of people, and I really just got back into reading. And let's look back. So in January, I read 7 books. However, I read a lot of really, really tiny books, so that was not, I don't really feel like that counts as much. So in February, I read 4 books, but 2 of them were audiobooks. In March, I only read 2 books, and I was having a moment in March. So then to have 8 books in April was kind of crazy to me, just to look back and be like, wow, okay, that's when I started kind of getting back to myself, right? So my worst month being August, that kind of makes me laugh because in between that I had like 4 books and 6 books and 5 books per month. And then 1 for August is absolutely hilarious to me. So in August, I had to kind of think back, like, what was I doing in August? Why wasn't I reading? What was I doing? I traveled a ton in August. At the end of July, I went on a cruise with my mom, my sister, her husband, and his family, and we had an absolutely phenomenal time. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna post up, I'm gonna read, I'm gonna have the best time. I did have the best time. However, I spent most of it drinking on the pool deck. Pause for a sip of wine. I had a blast. I partied the whole time, and it was honestly an absolute blast to just be out there with like half of my family. But then I come back in August and I did some camping. I actually did a solo trip by myself to the Grand Tetons in Wyoming at the end of August into September. So that was kind of my birthday present to myself. So if you guys didn't know, I am a Virgo, and I am very Virgo. Like, I am so Virgo that it is just like people are like, oh yeah, 100%. They hear that my birthday's in September and they're like, oh my God, yeah, that makes sense. Right before my birthday, I decided that I was going to go and do a solo trip, and I was going to do it. I love, 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 love Jackson Hole. I've been there maybe 3 or 4 times. I've been there a couple times in the winter to go snowboarding, and then I've been a couple of times as well in the summer. And there's just so much to do. So living in Denver, I have the opportunity, if I want to live like a very Western lifestyle. And I choose that is the way that I love the lifestyle. And that'll make sense with a couple of my book choices coming up here. But I love it. And so, like, we've got Stock Show coming up this month, and I'm so excited. It's my favorite time of year, minus Halloween. And so I loved that I could just go to Jackson and immerse myself in that lifestyle. I tent camped with me and my dog, and that's it. And yeah, we had a great time. It was absolutely beautiful. I rode horses. I did a lot of hiking, but that didn't leave a whole lot of time in August to just sit and read. So looking back, I realized that, you know what, sometimes it's okay if I don't hit my reading goals. It is okay if that's not the main priority in my life. Although in December, when I was looking back and thinking, what the heck, why was I so far behind on this reading goal? I took a step back and realized that, life is not all about hitting the reading goal. Life is about, are you enjoying the books? Are you enjoying the type of books that you're reading? Why are you enjoying them? Why aren't you enjoying them? And you know what? I have more DNFs this year than I have had in probably ever. And so I realized that if I'm not enjoying it, I'm not going to sit and read it. If I'm not captivated in the story, I'm going to pick up something else. And so I really did bounce around to books, and I had a few books at one time, most of the time. And so, yeah, this was really a year of learning, what does Shelby like? Why is she reading what she's reading? Is she not focusing on reading? Is she going out and spending time with her people? Is she socializing? Is she finding other creative outlets, which I'll talk about here in a little bit? But yes, it's okay not to hit your reading goal. However, I am still going to keep my reading goal for next year at 75, and I'm just going to be more intentional with it. And instead of watching shows and watching movies and reality TV that I'm literally going to get nothing out of, I'm going to set more intentional time to sit and read, because I really do get so much enjoyment out of it. And I feel like being immersed in a community that likes the same things that you like, and just being able to like bring out those conversations, one, not only does it help me understand the books better and get a better visual for it, but it also is just amazing having that sense of community. So that is one of my intentions for 2026, because it was not an intention for 2025. After that lovely rant here, we're going to go through a couple of other stats. So one of my stats that I was looking at is the one that was most different from my Goodreads rating. So I use Goodreads for all of my tracking. I know that people use different forms. So if you have something that you like better than Goodreads, please put a comment down below and say, hey, you need to use this instead of Goodreads because it's so much better. Because I've used Goodreads for so stinking long that I'm like, hey, it's fine. It houses all my books, but if I need to switch, please let me know. But anyway, so I was looking at my ratings versus the Goodread ratings, and the one that I had was most different. And if you're watching the video on Spotify or YouTube or wherever you're watching it, I will put images of them. Well, I guess on the screen. I don't know if that would be left or right, but I'll put it up on the screen here because a lot of these I don't have physical copies. So the one that I had that was most different from the general Goodreads rating is don't believe everything that you think. Now, okay, you guys, I've realized I don't love self-help books. You know, sometimes they kind of say the same thing about therapy, where it's like you can know the right thing to do all you want. However, at the end of the day, unless you're actually applying it in your life, it doesn't really matter. And so reading this book, I gave it a 2, which is technically my lowest rating minus DNFs. We'll go into that in just a second. So I finished this book, gave it a 2, didn't like it. It was a self-help book, and it was basically all about how you shouldn't let your mind trick you into thinking different things. Okay, you guys, I'm an extremely intellectual person. I intellectualize everything. I overanalyze every single thing in my life. And I can understand the concept that this book is like, oh, you don't need to worry about everything, like your brain is tricking you or whatever. But here's the thing. It wasn't for me. It wasn't what I needed to hear. It wasn't something that I believe, because I feel like you should want to intellectualize things. You should want to think on a deeper level. I didn't like that it was basically like, oh, whatever you're thinking isn't true. I didn't like that. And so even and it was like a super quick listen. I listened to it on an audiobook, and I just, it just wasn't for me. And I'm finding that with self-help books in general, I'm just like not that big of a fan. I like to hear people's stories. And so I like to listen to podcasts where people call in or send in their stories, because I like to hear from real world people and like then hearing the advice that's given after the stories are put in. So anyway, very long story. I just didn't love Don't Believe Everything That You Think. All right, moving on to some fun things. So we had what was most different from my Goodreads rating. Now, we already talked about the reading goal and how many I actually got to, which is not great. So the shortest book that I had was The Fall Risk by Abby Jimenez. It was a super quick listen. It was literally 81 pages, and I gave it a 5 stars. I love anything Abby Jimenez. I feel like if I am in a huge reading slump, the best way to freaking get me out of it is going to be a thriller or like a fun little romance, because it's going to be something that I don't have to think about. It's going to be something that I can just dive into. I don't have to get into like this deep world building. And so usually in between like series that I'm reading, I will stop and I will read like a quick thriller, which I am literally doing right now because I've been in the biggest reading slump in December. So, yeah, the shortest one that I picked up was The Fall Risk, the longest book that I have, you guys. And I know that nobody is going to be surprised because I'm sure if you follow on social media, you have seen this everywhere. But I have Alchemized by Senlin Yu. I will talk about this here in a little bit again. But this thing was a freaking massive book. I cannot believe that when I picked it up, like, this thing is so freaking heavy. It's literally 1,030 pages. That's absolutely insane. So we had the longest and the shortest books, but the average book length that I had was 443 pages, which is pretty average. Like, that is literally that is the amount of pages of books that I like to read. A good 400-page book is like, I can knock this out in a week. I know that I can. So I like it. Moving on, the most shelved book that I had on Goodreads was The Song of Achilles. Now, you guys, normally I love reading Greek mythology. I love it. This one, you guys, I still gave it a decent rating, but I just, I can see why people really like it. It just wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. And then the one that I have that was least shelved was The Curse of Soulwaker. And that only had like 1,800 people that had shelved it. I did receive it as an ARC with like an entire box with it, and I'm super appreciative. The concept I thought was going to be absolutely incredible. However, I just don't think it was for me. So the average rating of my books this year was a 4.3, which is awesome. You'll see here, we'll talk about it here in just a second. I had an absolutely great year. Like, even though I only read like 54 books, I still had an incredible year of reading. All right, you guys. The biggest surprise that I had this year was Daughter of No Worlds, and I'm going to put it up here if you're watching it on Spotify or YouTube. I do not have my copy right now because I gave it to one of my best friends because I finished it and immediately that day was like, you need to freaking read this. This is absolutely incredible. Now, it is a young adult. I believe it's young adult. But I'm such a sucker for young adult fantasy romance. I love it so much. And so one of my other best friends that I'm sure you guys know real well here on this podcast, Jenna, was like, you need to read this. I know that this is going to be totally up your alley. And you guys, she was not wrong. I devoured that first book. And I couldn't even tell you what it was. Like, I don't even know exactly why this book kept me hooked for so long, but it freaking did. It absolutely did, and it hit me in a spot when I want to say I started reading this in November, and I was like, I'm ready. I'm ready to just sit down and read, and I killed it. Like, I devoured this book in like 3 or 4 days. Like, it was so good. I loved it, and I'm already on the second one. So, I'm loving it. I'm loving it, and I knew that this was going to be some type of a series that I would really like, but I didn't know that it was going to hit like an infinity star. Another book that I will be mentioning this book like a few times within this episode. So another biggest surprise is Alchemized. And no words currently. Currently no words. I loved it. We'll talk about it here in a little bit again. On the other hand, my most disappointed book for the year, and I know that I have a physical copy somewhere, but I couldn't be bothered to grab it, was Babel by R.F. Kuang. Now, you guys, I wanted to love this so bad. We read this for a book club, maybe back in September, maybe even October, because if you didn't know, we do host a book club every single month, and we didn't do one for December, but it's going to be picking back up in January. So if you're in Denver and you're looking for a book club, I'm just going to give a shameless plug here to send us a DM on Instagram. That's the best way that you can find us because we're more responsive on there because we can see the messages a little bit easier. So if you're looking for a book club and you're in Denver, let me know. I can get you added to that group chat. And anyway, so the most disappointed book that I had was Babel. I was so excited. I was so excited for like those gothic-y old time vibes. And I just, I don't know why I could not get into the book. I finished it. I liked the concept of what they were trying to do. However, it just, I was pushing so hard to get through it. And then the ending it just didn't hit for me. It didn't hit. And I was really disappointed. I got done with it and I was like, damn, all of that for that. And I know people rave about this book. People rave about, like, again, I loved the concepts. People rave about it, and I think that that's incredible. It just, it unfortunately flopped for me, and I wish it didn't, because I had this book on my TBR for probably 3 years. And so I was really looking forward to something that I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to dive in. It's going to be so good. Oh, it unfortunately just wasn't the case, you guys. All right. So before we dive into some more statistics, now I want to go through my favorites and my least favorites for each month of the year. All right, you guys, starting out with January. So in January, I read 7 books. Clearly, I was not leaving the house, which, why would we in January? Except for Stock Show, which I'm so excited for. Okay, my favorite of January was Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. You guys, I know that there are a lot of controversial opinions on this book. I am aware. However, I freaking loved it. This was my favorite out of the series so far. And Fourth Wing is one of my favorite books that I've ever read. I think that this even tops that. But I get that way. So when I read a series, I get the way where I just think it gets better and better and better. As soon as I am immersed in the characters and the world and the powers and the magic system and everything happening, I get so immersed. I don't even know what it was. Like, I can't even tell you exactly what it was that I loved so much about this book, other than you're just like diving back into a world that you know that you already love. And I killed it. I loved it. I loved it so, so, so much. Learning about Xaden and Violet's relationship and everything that happened at the end of book 2 kind of coming to head, even though you're a little bit confused in the first few chapters, first half of the book. The ending, that is just one of the endings that I just couldn't get over. Plus, I waited outside of my Target for 30 minutes to get this stinking copy of the book. Now, if you can see it on the video that we have going, I did not get the Target edition. But I did get one of the really pretty sprayed edges, and you know what? I actually kind of like this one better. So, it was well worth it. Okay, I already talked about this one, but my least favorite for January was Don't Believe Everything You Think by Joseph Wynn. Again, just didn't hit. It was just a bummer. All right, we're going to move on to February. Now, February, I had 2 books that I swear I just could not choose between that for my favorites. I read 4 books in February, but 2 of them were audiobooks, so I can't say that I read that much, right? The ones that I couldn't choose between were Lights Out by Navessa Allen and then Between the Pines by Amber Palmer. Now, I read these both on my Kindle, so I'm going to put them both up on the screen here if you're watching the video. You guys, if you haven't read Lights Out by Navessa Allen, I know that this had a huge moment at the beginning of the year, but it is for good freaking reason. I loved this book so much. It was like one of those books where it's like, so it's a stalker romance, and it was one of those books where it's like, yeah, the concepts are kind of dark, but like the golden retriever of the male main character is just so funny, you guys. It was hilarious. There were multiple times where I'd be listening to it and I would just giggle and I would laugh. Like, I just couldn't help it. It was so funny. And there are very specific scenes where I look back and I'm like, oh my God, that scene was so funny. And the more that I hear about it and the more that I watch videos and clips and whatnot, because people love to clip from this book, it is hysterical. The more that I see these clips, the funnier and funnier that it gets, and I can't get over it. It's one of those books where I just like can't stop thinking about, even though, again, it's a stalker romance. It is not like Haunting Adeline. So if you're like, hey, I would like a stalker romance, I would like to dive in a little bit. I would think that this is what you should go for because it is so freaking funny and very spicy. And you know, on this podcast, we love the spicy. So, moving on, my other one that was tied with Lights Out by Navessa Allen is going to be Between the Pines by Amber Palmer. And if you guys have been listening to us for a while, you know this is an Amber Palmer stan freaking account. And not only do we love her fantasy romance novels, but you guys, she dove into her cowboy era this year, and ooh-wee, I cannot get enough. I am obsessed, and these books are so stinking cute as well. I have them on my Kindle, so I don't have the physical copies yet. But let me tell you, if you are looking for a cowboy romance, you have to read Between the Pines from Amber Palmer. I cried. I laughed. The spicy scenes. We've said it so many times. She has such a way with the way that she does her spicy scenes, and I am literally just obsessed. And so, yes, Between the Pines by Amber Palmer. You're killing it, girl. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy to see how far you've come. And you guys, these books just have like a special place in my heart. Like, I think back to the main characters all the time and those specific scenes. You guys, there's a whiskey tasting scene in Between the Pines, and I just, especially because I was just talking about earlier in this episode that I love like that Western lifestyle, and I love to ride horses. I love to go to the rodeo. I love stock show. I love it. I love it all. I can't get enough of it. And so having something that just felt so close to home is just, it's so good. It's so good. Okay, so moving on. So for February, my least favorite was Priest by Sierra Simone. So you guys, I still liked this book. I like it. I like a good taboo romance. But it wasn't my favorite of the month, and so I'm not going to say it was bad. It was just the least favorite. And that's funny because moving on to March, where I only read 2 books, absolutely insane. My favorite was Sinner by Sierra Simone, and that is going to be the second book in the series right after Priest. And that's hilarious that the first one was the least favorite, and then the second one was another favorite. But you know what? It is what it is. For March, the only other book that I read was The Curse of Soulwaker, and that was unfortunately a DNF. I couldn't do it. It was just, I just think I either wasn't in the headspace for that type of book, or it just didn't hit for me. And that's okay. It's not saying it's bad. I actually really liked the concept of it. Again, I only read 2 books this month, so I probably just wasn't in a mood to sit and read. Okay, going to April. April was a really, really good book month for me. I read 8 books, and it was so difficult to choose which book was my actual favorite of the month, because out of the 8 books that I read, I gave 7 of them 5 stars, which is absolutely insane. So to choose a 5-star was a little difficult. However, we did it. So you will also recognize this name if you have been with Miss Willow's book club for a while. We've got an interview with her. We are obsessed with her initial trilogy. And so the favorite that I chose for April was A Forbidden Alchemy by Stacey McKeown. And you guys, this has such fun vibes. If you guys have seen Peaky Blinders, I swear you are just like put into that world, but like with magic. And it is so fun, and the male main character is just absolutely incredible. And I loved the female main character too. And I never ended up doing an episode on this year, so I gifted one of my other best friends a very special edition copy of A Forbidden Alchemy. And so stay tuned for this year, because we will be having the second book come out. So we might as well just go ahead and review those all. I am absolutely obsessed with Stacey, if you guys know. absolutely obsessed. Obsessed with her first trilogy, obsessed with her as a person. If you do not follow her on TikTok, you are seriously missing out because she is absolutely stinking hilarious. So, Stacey, if you're listening, huge shout out. Love you to pieces. Okay, now for least favorite of the month was These Twisted Bonds by Lexi Ryan, which is unfortunately another DNF. It was a little too young adult for me. And I was listening to it, and so that could have been it too. And this is either the second or the third in the series. And so I did end up DNFing it. I was reading other things that I just absolutely really loved, clearly because of the 7 5-star reads that I gave. But yeah, so it just kind of is what it is. All right, moving on to May. So for May, I read 4 books. And the favorite that I have from this month is Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang. And I love the edges on this one. It's just like a solid red edge to both of them, but it's absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And you guys, this book we did it had to have been our May book club. It sparked so much conversation. There was so much political intrigue in the book. There were a lot of things that people could kind of go either way on from the ending. And so we sat and talked for quite a long time in the park for one of our book clubs. And it was so good. It was one of those books where it was like going into it, you knew that there was going to be a lot of discussion around the book. And especially with the ending just having such a controversial piece to it. And the whole book just having this huge just political intrigue. It was just so good. This is not a book that I would normally gravitate towards. Same with now that I've read Babel and now that I actually know what it's about, that's also a similar book where I'm like, I just don't like to dive into politics like that, especially in a fantasy book. So I didn't love it. I didn't love Babel. However, this one, it was so, so, so good. I absolutely adored Blood Over Brighthaven, and I feel like this would be one that I would actually recommend to a ton of different people. My least favorite book of May is Vicious Secret by Morgan Bridges. I read this on my Kindle, and again, not a bad book. I actually really liked the book. It was just, I had a lot of really good reads this year, so it was really hard to choose, like, how do I choose a favorite and a least favorite when I've got 4 and 5-star reads for all of them? Okay, June. This brought one of my favorite books of the entire year, and that is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. And I have one of the most beautiful copies. I believe it's a Barnes & Noble exclusive edition, and you guys, if you can see it in the video, oh my god, it is so beautiful. This is just one of those books that I will probably continuously think of. Because if you guys have read One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns, that series, there is just something about the cadence and the beautiful, like, artistic way of writing that Rachel Gillig has that I'm just like, she's going to be an automatic buy author. Because I just know that I'm going to get into it and I'm going to get to the pace and I'm just going to adore the writing. And sometimes you just need that. Sometimes you just need poetic writing to go along with some like really fun spicy scenes. So The Night and the Moth was my favorite read of June. And my least favorite read of June is unfortunately another DNF. It was The Secrets of Jane, Forgotten by Charlotte Mallory. Now, this was also gifted to me, and I was going back and forth between reading the physical copy and listening to the audio, because they not only did they give us the physical arc, but they also gave us the audiobook. And you guys, this book was not bad. Like, I don't think that there are bad books. I think that there are books that are just like meant for different people. And so The Secrets of Jane, Forgotten it's like a pirate book, which is super fun. I was super excited for it because it is a little bit different than some things that I had been reading this year. It just, I don't know. There were just other books that I was liking more. So with all the books that I did DNF this year, I do think like they may not be DNF'd forever. Like there's a good chance that some of these I will just go back and start over because maybe I just needed to be in a different headspace. And that happens with a lot of different things. Like I probably wouldn't have liked Lights Out when I was like in the midst of my breakup in 2024, but because I read it when I did, I just liked it a little bit better. All right, moving right on to July. So for July, I read 5 books. And the top book that I had was Through the Dust by Amber Palmer. Now, this is going to be a sequel to Between the Pines, so this is also another cowboy romance, which I love, and I liked this one better than I liked the first one. There was something about that female main character that I just connected with so hard. I loved it. I was so immersed in it. I could not get enough. I sobbed. There is something about a female main character going through hardships and understanding and learning herself that I can't. I love it. I love it. And then for July, my least favorite book, you guys are going to hate me, Please Don't Cancel Me, was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. And like I kind of said a little bit earlier, I love Greek mythology normally. I think I was just reading other books that I liked better because I couldn't even give you a reason why it just didn't hit. It wasn't for me, I think. I thought it was going to be. It was kind of disappointing that it wasn't. Moving on to August, we only had one book, so you know what? I'm going to put it at my favorites because it's Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. I listened to this one. I cannot wait for the sequel, although I'm probably going to pick up the sequel and read it physically because I want to reread this one already before I get to the sequel. I feel like sometimes when I'm listening to a book in audio form, I'm just not getting as much out of it as I would probably like to. I love listening to audiobooks. I'm not saying that they're less than. I'm not saying they don't count because I love it. And we'll get into, I read quite a lot of audiobooks this year. So I'm not saying that is bad. I'm just saying I don't get as much out of it as when I sit down and crack open a book and sit and look at words on paper. Okay, that was the only book that I had, and it was so good. I had to put it as a favorite, not a least favorite. So now moving on to September, my favorite book of the month was The Fallen and the Kiss of Dusk by Carissa Broadbent. This is the second book of the Shadowborn duet, and this is a Crowns of Neaxia novel. Now, we have done many podcast episodes on this series because I can't get enough. I absolutely love the series. I am obsessed with Carissa Broadbent. The way that Carissa Broadbent shapes her characters and has them go through turmoil and has them go through this like big growth period to ultimately, hopefully, come out on the top. Like there is just something that is so beautiful. I swear I cry in every single one of her books, which is good for me. I love something that's going to like bring up that emotion. So my favorite in September that I finished was The Fallen and the Kiss of Dusk. And then we've already talked about it, so I'm not going to harp on this book anymore, but my least favorite in September was Babel. No more words need to be said about it. But another book that I really do want to talk about that was my favorite in October was Alchemized by Senlin Yu. Now, you guys, I have had Manacled on my TBR and actually downloaded on my Kindle for probably a year and a half. I have heard so many amazing stories about Manacled on TikTok, on Instagram, wherever you find your bookish content. I have heard it over and over and over and over again. And everybody was like, it's really dark. Well, you know what? That's right up my freaking alley. So when this came out, I knew it was going to be an immediate thing. I went right away in the morning. I had to get my copy. Even though it's 1,030 pages, I knew that I had to have it. And for good reason, because it was so good. It was honestly one of my favorite books that I have read this entire year. And yes, it's dark, but it's actually not as dark as I thought it was going to be. It was like the perfect amount of like wartime and darkness, but like a little bit of a love story. And I loved it. Now, I have not read Manacled. I did not read Manacled. So this was all completely new to me. And when I have talked to people that have read it, like Jenna, when we've talked about this book and we were talking about the differences between Manacled and Alchemized, she said that the plot was basically the same. And it was actually really impressive how it was kept the same, even though it was different. So if you guys are not familiar, Manacled is fan fiction from Harry Potter. And so it is based off of Harry Potter. But this book absolutely blew up on AO3, which is like a website that people go to write different stories and write fan fiction. So it absolutely blew up, and people really, really wanted her, Senlin Yu, the author, people really wanted her to publish it. But she couldn't because it's fan fiction. And so she completely redid it, and she took all of the Harry Potter elements out of it, and she created her own story. And I loved it. I loved it. It was 1,000 pages, and it feels like 1,000 pages. It's probably one of the longest books that I have ever read. However, it was worth it. It's worth it. Like, you get to that third section, and you're like, oh my gosh, everything is coming in, and oh my gosh, I can't say anymore because this is a spoiler-free episode. However, obsessed. I'm obsessed. I can't stop. My least favorite that I'm not going to harp on because I still liked it was Coven by Harper L. Woods. And I was supposed to go to a book club for this book. However, I was sick that weekend. So for November, I had 5 books that I read. My top was Daughter of No Worlds, which I've harped on so many times. If you follow me on TikTok or Instagram, you know that I am obsessed with this book, and I am absolutely loving the series as well. So, moving on to the least favorite for November was Veil of Death and Shadow by Gray Holborn. That was technically my least favorite. Although, you guys, I had so many good books that I just had to choose one. And that was it. I did really like it, though. I felt like it was a really interesting concept, and that ending had me so hooked. December, I'm not even going to choose. I couldn't choose a least favorite. I read 3 books in December, and it was so hard to choose favorites, so I just didn't. I simply said I can't choose, because how do you choose between Brimstone by Callie Hart, and I got the beautiful Target edition, and I'm absolutely obsessed with it. I loved this book. I love talking about this book. I love this entire series. I love talking about Kingfisher and Ceres, and I love talking about Carrion. So stay tuned, because there are episodes coming up. If you read Brimstone and you want to talk about it, we have got some episodes, so just stay tuned. But how do you choose between Brimstone, The Night Prince by Lauren Palfreyman, and The Bond That Burns by Briar Bolane? All of these series were series that I had seen on TikTok. And these were all like, oh my God, if you haven't picked up a book, if you're in a book slump and you need something, you pick up these books. And you guys, they were not wrong. The Night Prince and The Bond That Burns are both second in series, but you guys, I've been listening to both of those series, and I need the sequels to come out. So stay tuned for another episode. I'm going to talk about books that I really, really, really am looking forward to for 2026, and you might see those sequels in there. So obsessed, you guys. December was such a good reading month. I can't get over it. I have been reading such good books recently. I'm obsessed. And I'm like, thank goodness, because I have been in the worst book slump. So those are my least favorites and my favorites for each month out of the year. Now let's dive back into a couple of little stats before we go into some deeper dives for the year. Okay, looking back, I had 35.8% books that I read were audiobooks. You guys, that is so many. I listened. I listened to so many audiobooks this year. It was absolutely insane. And I'm like, I don't even remember reading all of those books this year, or listening to it. I keep doing that. Listening to all those books this year. I'm like, if I wouldn't have listened to all those books, my reading goal or my reading target was so low. Oh my gosh. So then I had 25% hardbacks, 29% paperbacks, and then only 11% on my Kindle, which I barely picked up my Kindle at all this year, except for my spicy books. And This was kind of a low year for spicy books. So, all right, looking at my ratings. My ratings this year. Remember how I said that I had a ton of 5-star reads this year? 45% of the books that I read this year, I rated 5 stars. Who am I? Why did I rate all these books 5 stars? Although when I looked back at those 5 stars and I looked at each of them I chose, it was actually pretty valid. I had such a good reading year this year. Even though I only read like 45 books, you know what? I'll take it. I'll take it because 45% of them, I chose 5 stars. So at least I was choosing good books, right? 4 stars was about 23% of my reads. 3 stars was about 15%. 2 stars was about 4%. I DNF'd 8% of the books that I read this year, which is way more than in the past years, which is absolutely crazy. And looking at my infinity stars, these are like books that I won't ever stop talking about, was about 6% of my books this year. So you guys, infinity stars and 5 stars together was about half of the books that I read this year, and that is so insane to me. Quality over quantity at this point. That's what I'm going to say, because you know what? This year I've said that about relationships. I've said that about friends. I've said that about experiences. We are doing quality over quantity, and you know what? I wouldn't mind if that continued in 2026. Oh, that makes me so happy that all the books that I read this year were just so good. And if they weren't, I put them down, and that is okay. I'm not going to put the pressure on myself to sit here and read books that I'm not actually enjoying. All right, so 82% of the books that I read this year were in a series. Only 17% of them were standalone, which is pretty on track for me. I feel like I'm in the middle of like a ton of different series. And you know, I just, like I've said before, I love being immersed in the world. I love being immersed in a series and the characters and the growth and the development. And you know the world, you're not questioning, you're not guessing. I love it. We are done with the statistics for now. No more numbers. No more numbers. Now we are going to move into some book superlatives. The book that I thought was the best written this year was easily, by far, The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. I feel that way about her first duology. I feel that way about this one. There is just something about her writing that I'm just obsessed with. And I know that the second one has been announced, and so I just can't wait. I can't wait. I love it. I know that I'm going to devour anything that Rachel Gillig comes out with. So, best written, The Night and the Moth. So easy. Such an easy choice. The book that I got the most emotional over was Alchemized by Sen Lin Yu. I talked about this earlier. It was dark. There's a lot of trials and tribulations that these characters have to go through. And you guys, I sobbed. I sobbed my eyes out, dry heaving, can't stop. Had to stare at a wall after this because if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. But if you are looking for a book that you just want to sob your eyes out to, Alchemized. Highly, highly, highly recommend. It's a big one, but it is very worth it. Okay, you guys, 2 books that I read this year that were the most unhinged. I could not choose between the 2. And you're going to see why. So, the first one was Lights Out by Navessa Allen. If you've read it, you know that it is absolutely unhinged in the best way. The golden retriever of the mailman character, kind of like I talked about earlier, probably one of my favorites that I've ever read, ever, because I love me a good golden retriever, but like he's spicy. So we love that. We love it. So Lights Out, so unhinged. There are so many scenes in that book that people are recreating, and it cracks me up every single time. The other one that you guys are also going to be like, oh my God, of course, is Butcher and Blackbird. Now, there are some scenes, like the Orso Pasta scene, that we have recreated, thank you, Jenna, on our TikTok, and it is hilarious. There are just so many different scenes, and what is up with the food? Girl, you are making me not want to eat certain foods, and we actually have an episode on Butcher and Blackbird, but I haven't read the sequels, but I want to. I just knew that I wasn't in a headspace for some of the rest of the year. Like, I wanted to dive into more of like the fantasy romance, like something with a good plot. Crazy. Who am I? But Butcher and Blackbird was a good one. It was fun, and I liked it, and I feel like I would also really like the sequels. So, here's the thing, though. So unhinged. You have to go into it knowing it is just going to be wild. You're going to go for a wild ride, and you're going to be like, what the hell is happening? Which sometimes is just fun. Sometimes it's just fun to have a book that you can laugh with. Okay, moving on to best romance was Through the Dust by Amber Palmer. And you guys, I've talked about it so many times this episode. I love Amber Palmer. I love the way she does her romance books. I'm obsessed with a good cowboy romance. Through the Dust, the second in the trilogy, is just absolutely, it's heartbreaking in the best way. So that made its top for the best romance of the year. All right, you guys, best character in any book that I read this year. And I only had one person that came to mind. We've got Carrion Swift from the Fae and Alchemy series. Carrion motherfucking Swift. Oh my God, you guys. I think he might be one of my favorite characters of all time. Of all time. He is just that comedic relief that you get throughout the books, which is absolutely hilarious. And for him to have just such a huge part in Brimstone just made my heart so happy because he's just hilarious. Like, I don't even have anybody else that I can compare him to. He is just my favorite character from 2025. We've gone through the stats. We've gone through my favorites and least favorites. Now let's zoom out a little bit. Let's look back at the big picture before I wrap up this whole episode. Let's look at how my reading taste shifted in 2025. Looking back and reflecting on this year, it actually hit me pretty hard because in the past, when I was unhappy, living somewhere where I didn't love, and I felt like I didn't have a whole lot that I actually did on a day-to-day basis, I was like, I'm just going to sit and read, and I'm going to read as much as possible. I'm going to read everything that I can. And now I've kind of gotten into a place where I'm like, no, if it's not catching my attention, I'm not just going to finish it for a number. I want reading to mean something a little bit more to me again. I want to read books that I know that are going to be something that I'm going to really like. And so I haven't been picking up as many books that I probably would have in the past, but you know what? Clearly, from my reading choices this year, I had an incredible rating for my reads this year. And that is very exciting because it shows that I know myself a little bit more and that I'm choosing books that I know that I'm going to like a little bit more too. So that's exciting. That's a huge growth moment that I like to see for myself from this year. 2025 was an extremely transformative year. I went through a lot, and I know that a lot of people can say that as well because 2025 rocked a lot of people. It was a tough year for a lot of people, but you know what? Amongst the tough parts of the year, there was a lot of growth. I would like to say hopefully on the other side of it is just, it's really exciting to look back and see how far I've come because I am more myself now than I have been in years. And so looking back on that is just very exciting. It's exciting to see how my book taste changed while I was also changing as a human being. This year taught me a lot about myself. If you are anything into astrology, I love astrology. I love a little witchy woo-woo. 2025 was the year of the snake. It was the year of the shedding, and I did that a lot. And I feel like even though a lot of other things were happening in my life and I was shedding a lot of things, a lot of people, a lot of friends, a lot of relationships, a lot of things that just were no longer serving me, I still kept some core values. So I still had the fantasy romance that's not going to go anywhere. It is one of my favorite things to read. However, I didn't read as much romance. I didn't read as many thrillers. I didn't read as many horror stories. Because I do usually gravitate towards that, especially when I know that something isn't totally catching my attention. But this year it was just like, you know what? I know that I like fantasy romance. I'm just going to dive in. But another thing that I noticed was that this year was less about just comfort reads. So like I was saying with the romance or the thrillers, I was looking for depth. I was looking for character growth. I was looking for like good magic worlds. I was looking for things that I knew were going to gravitate towards like ideas that I was going through in my own life. And because I was looking for more depth and I was looking for myself, I felt like I was a little bit looking for that in books. So thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I feel like this being such a transformative year, it's just so fun to look at back and look at all the books that I was reading this year, what I found interesting, what I DNF'd, what going into 26 is going to be what I gravitate towards. So I had to sit and ask myself, what did I need from books this year, and did they give it to me? And honestly, yes, they did. With the amount of 5-star reads and infinity star reads that I had this year, I learned that I just needed to set aside some things that weren't bringing me enjoyment. I was learning to lean into what it is that I actually like. And I feel like I was doing that with books, but hey, I was doing that in my personal life. I have learned so much about myself in this past year, and I feel like my taste in reading looks just like that. And how exciting is that? To have something that you can look back on and reflect and see, you know what? Heck yeah. Like, this was a tough year, but we are killing it. We are coming out on the other side. We are growing. And now we're in the year of the horse. So I'm hoping for all of our sakes that it is going to be a fantastic year for all of us. On that note, after some deep diving, I'm going to keep my goal at 75. I'm going to be more intentional about the time that I'm spending reading. I'm going to dive into some authors that I know that I love so much. So I've got a lot of series that I'm continuing right now. Now, I need you to tell me in the comments, what was your best read of the year? What was your worst read of the year? What was the read that really just surprised you? Let me know. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me on this journey. This has been a freaking journey, going from 2025 to 2026. And I hope that we had some similar reads. But again, let me know in the comments, like, what is it that you guys are reading? What is it that you guys are looking for in 2026? What kind of podcast episodes are you looking for 2026? Are you looking for some more personal deep dives like this just between us? Or are you looking for some like hard-hitting book reviews? Because I can give you both, but it's all about what you guys are looking for. So I just want to thank you guys so much for being a part of this book club. It truly means the world to me that you guys are here and listening, because I feel like when I jump on and I'm talking to you guys about some of the reads, like, I'm just sitting here talking to my best friends. And I love it. That is what I want this podcast to be about. I want this to just be a warm space where, hey, we're allowed to have some wine or coffee or whatever you're drinking. I love a good drink of the episode. But I hope you're enjoying this just as much as I do. And if you did, give me a like, give me a share, give me a rating and or a review, because all of it helps us. All right, friends. That is my 2025 reading year. We got the highs, we got the lows, we got the surprises, and the books that are going to stay with me for a long time. I hope that this made you think about your reading year too. The stories that held you, that challenged you, or just made you feel less alone. If any book that I mentioned made you feel strongly in either direction, I really want to hear about it. Send me a DM, put a comment down below. Whatever way you want to get in touch with me, let me know. Thank you so much for spending time with me today and being a part of this little corner of readers on the internet. It genuinely means more to me than I could ever express. And I cannot wait to start 2026 with you all. So here's to a year of stories, to reading what we actually love, and not forcing ourselves to finish books that aren't for us. I will see you all in the next episode. Thank you so much.